It's hard to look away from these images, you know?
Yeah.
The Los Angeles sky glowing red from the fire and the smoke so thick it's like it blots out the sun.
Really does.
We're diving into a whole collection of reports and personal accounts
Mm-hmm.
and expert analyses of this fire for today's deep dive.
Wow.
And trying to get beyond just the headlines, you know?
Right.
We really want to understand the impact,
Yeah.
what this disaster really means.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to hear stories of those families that were forced to flee
Right.
and the bravery of the firefighters.
Yeah.
But we're also going to look at the long-term consequences of something like this for the environment, the
Yeah.
economy, the community as a whole.
The scale is what's striking right from the start.
Yeah.
You know, it's thousands of acres that have been scorched.
Oh, wow.
Entire neighborhoods evacuated.
Oh.
And they had to mobilize so many resources just to try and contain it. Think about the logistics alone.
Yeah.
Having to coordinate hundreds of firefighters, air support.
Emergency services, all while everything's changing by the minute.
Right.
Yeah.
And then in the middle of all of that, you've got families grabbing whatever they can.
Yeah.
Making these just impossible decisions about what to leave behind. There's one story that really stuck with me. A family that had to choose between their photo albums
Oh, wow.
or their emergency supplies.
Oh, gosh.
It really drives home the human cost of a disaster like this.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's not just belongings.
Right.
It's people's entire lives being disrupted, this uncertainty
Right.
and the trauma of having to leave your home
Right.
and not knowing if you're ever going to be able to return.
Oh, gosh.
The psychological impact of these events, I think, is often overlooked, but it's just such a key part of the recovery.
It makes you wonder how people find the strength to rebuild.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
We also see these incredible displays of courage, especially from the firefighters.
Right.
The ones right there on the front lines.
Yeah.
You know, when you hear firefighters describe battling a blaze like this,
Yeah.
it's almost like they're talking about fighting something that's alive.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Yeah.
They push it back in one area, and then suddenly it erupts
Gosh.
with even more ferocity
Wow.
somewhere else. They're dealing with intense heat.
Right.
The winds are always changing.
Yeah.
And there's this constant risk of being trapped or injured.
Oh, gosh.
It's just a testament to their dedication and skill.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And it's not just the professional firefighters either, right?
No.
We hear stories about everyday people stepping up,
Mm-hmm.
helping their neighbors evacuate,
Yeah.
offering shelter, even forming bucket brigades just to protect their homes.
Wow.
It's just amazing. There's this sense of community that comes out
Yeah.
in these situations.
It's powerful, you know. Like, even in all this chaos
Right.
and devastation, people still find ways to help each other out. I think it speaks to our capacity for compassion and that resilience
Absolutely.
that we have as humans. But even with all these acts of heroism, we got to look at the bigger picture here. This fire isn't just some random event.
Right.
Studies are showing that California's fire season has grown by 78 days
Oh, wow.
since the 1970s.
Gosh.
It's directly linked to temperatures rising.
So climate change is a huge factor here.
Yes.
It's making these fires more frequent, more intense, and harder to control.
Right.
It brings up the question, how do we break this cycle? Is it even possible to prevent these types of disasters from happening in the future?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there's really no easy answer. It's going to take a multifaceted approach.
Right.
You know, we need to address forest management practices,
Yeah.
urban planning strategies, and global climate change mitigation efforts.
Right.
All of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does feel like this is a turning point for us. You know, this fire obviously is tragic,
Right.
but it's forcing us to confront some maybe uncomfortable truths
Yeah.
about how we interact with the environment and how we've built our communities.
You know, reading through all these reports, it's clear that the environmental consequences,
Yeah,
they go way beyond just the damage from the fire itself.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's entire ecosystems we're talking about here.
Right.
Forests that took decades,
Oh, wow.
even centuries to grow, gone in just a matter of days.
God.
The impact on wildlife is devastating,
Yeah.
not just from the flames, but from losing their habitat.
Right.
And then on top of all that, there's the air quality.
Oh, yeah.
The smoke and ash from these fires
Yeah.
can travel hundreds of miles
Wow.
and affect people far beyond the fire zone.
It's a reminder that these events have these ripple effects
Yeah.
that extend way beyond the immediate area. And speaking of ripple effects, What about the economic impact?
Right.
I imagine the cost of fighting a fire of this magnitude has got to be astronomical.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the firefighting expenses alone are in the millions,
Wow.
if not billions of dollars.
Gosh.
But then you got to factor in the rebuilding the infrastructure,
Yeah.
homes, businesses,
Man,
power lines, all of that.
it's a lot.
And then think about all the local businesses that are affected, restaurants, shops, hotels that rely on tourism.
Right?
All of that just comes to a standstill during something like this.
It's like this chain reaction.
Yeah.
One thing impacts another and the losses just keep piling up.
Yeah, it's easy to get overwhelmed by it all.
Yeah.
You know, the destruction and the long road to recovery.
Right.
But there are these glimmers of hope
Yeah.
that come out of these ashes, so to speak.
Absolutely.
What's really inspiring is seeing how these communities come together
Yeah.
in the aftermath.
Hmm.
People opening up their homes to evacuees,
Right.
volunteers, organizing these donation drives,
Mm-hmm.
businesses offering free services to people who've been impacted.
It's amazing.
It's just this powerful reminder that even when things are at their worst,
Right.
the human spirit just shines through.
There's one story that really captures that spirit for me. This local bakery. They
Yeah.
lost everything in the fire. Their ovens, their supplies all gone.
Oh, gosh.
But in just a few days, the whole community rallied around them,
That's great.
donating equipment and ingredients.
Wow.
They even donated their time to help them get back on their feet.
That's amazing.
And the bakery, they were able to start baking bread again
Wow.
and providing food for first responders and evacuees.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's a small act of kindness, but I think it really speaks volumes about resilience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the immediate relief.
Right.
We're also seeing a lot of innovation and forward thinking coming out of this.
Oh, yeah.
Architects and engineers are looking at ways to build more fire-resistant homes and infrastructure.
Right.
They're using materials that can withstand that intense heat
Wow.
and those ember attacks.
So it's about learning from these tragedies and using that knowledge to rebuild in a smarter way
Right.
and create these more resilient communities.
Exactly. And that extends to how we manage forests and wildlands. Right. Controlled burns, for example.
Yeah.
They can play a big role in reducing that buildup
Right.
of all that flammable vegetation
Yeah.
and reducing the risk of those catastrophic wildfires.
Right.
Think of it as preventative medicine for the forest.
Okay.
By carefully managing that underbrush
Yeah.
and removing dead trees,
Right.
we can make it harder for those fires to spread out of control.
It sounds like a delicate balance, though.
It is.
Too much fuel and you have a tinderbox just waiting to ignite too little and you're messing with the ecosystem.
Yeah, you're right. It takes a nuanced approach.
Mm-hmm.
We need to understand the needs of each ecosystem
Right.
and work with nature,
Yeah.
not against it.
I see.
And this is where policy comes in.
Okay.
We need to invest in research,
Mm-hmm.
support sustainable forestry practices,
Right.
and implement policies that promote responsible land management.
So it's not just about putting out fires.
Right.
It's about addressing the root causes
Exactly.
from the individual level all the way up to government policy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important for our listeners to remember.
Yeah.
This isn't just a problem for people who live in those fire-prone areas.
No.
This is a global issue
Yes, it is.
that affects us all.
Absolutely. Climate change is a major driver
Yeah.
for these increasingly frequent and intense wildfires.
Yeah.
And we can't control the weather,
Right.
but we can control our actions,
Mhm.
and we can advocate for those policies
Yeah.
that address those root causes.
You know, one thing that really stood out to me while going through these sources is this idea of personal preparedness.
Right.
Even if we have the best policies in place,
Yeah.
these disasters are still going to happen.
Hmm.
So what can people do to protect themselves and their families?
That's a great point.
Huh.
Personal preparedness is key.
Yeah.
The first step is having a plan.
Okay.
Talk with your family about what to do if there's a fire.
Yeah.
Designate meeting spots.
Right.
Map out those evacuation routes.
And having a go bag ready.
Yes.
With the essential supplies,
Right.
water, food, medication.
Yeah.
Important documents, that's all critical, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And don't forget about creating that defensible space around your home.
Yeah.
That means clearing away brush and flammable materials
Right.
within a certain radius of your house.
Yeah.
Think of it as creating a buffer zone
Okay.
to help protect your home from those flames.
Yeah. It's amazing what we can do as individuals.
Right.
Sometimes it feels like these big problems,
Yeah.
they're just out of our control, you
Mhm.
know? But even taking small steps, being prepared, that can really make a difference.
It is empowering, isn't it?
Yeah.
To realize that we're not just bystanders. You know,
Right.
we can be part of creating a safer
Right.
and more resilient future for
Excellent.
everyone. And it's not just about the physical stuff.
Yeah.
It's about being mentally and emotionally prepared, too. These events can be incredibly traumatic.
Yeah.
And it's okay to acknowledge that
Yeah.
and to get support if you need it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We tend to focus on the physical damage,
Right.
but the emotional and psychological scars,
Yeah.
those can last a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about it,
Yeah.
connecting with others who've gone through something similar,
Right.
those are such important steps in healing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that brings us back to the importance of community. These shared experiences, as painful as they are, can create these really strong bonds
Yeah.
and a sense of resilience.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see people coming together to help each other,
Right.
not just right after it happens, but also in that long process of rebuilding.
It's like this phoenix rising from the ashes,
Yeah.
a community finding its strength and its hope
Mm-hmm.
in the face of adversity.
Yeah. It really makes you wonder,
Yeah.
what if this tragedy,
Right.
as awful as it has been, could actually be a catalyst for real change?
Right.
What if it makes us rethink our relationship with the environment, build more sustainably,
Right.
make our communities more resilient,
Yeah.
and prioritize preparedness and taking action?
That's a powerful thought.
Yeah, I think it's possible. This fire has shown us just how urgently we need to act
Right.
on so many different levels.
Yeah.
It's like a wake-up call,
Yeah.
reminding us that we're all connected.
Yeah.
And the choices we make today
Right.
are going to have an impact on the future.
Absolutely. So what are some of the key takeaways that you hope our listeners will get from this deep dive?
I hope, most of all, they come away with a better understanding
Okay.
of all the complex things that contribute to this climate change, how we impact the environment, natural events like wildfires.
Right.
It's not about blaming anyone.
Right.
It's about understanding that we're all part of this.
Yeah.
And we all have a role to play in finding solutions.
It's not just about those big solutions.
Right.
It's the individual things we can do too.
Yes, being prepared,
Right.
having a plan, knowing what to do in an emergency.
Right.
Those things can make a big difference.
Absolutely.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And the more we understand about all of this, the better we can make decisions
Right.
and take action.
Absolutely.
Whether it's advocating for policies, supporting organizations doing the work,
Yeah.
or just making different choices in our own lives.
Right.
Every little bit helps.
So as we wrap up our look at the Los Angeles fire today, I want to leave our listeners with a sense of hope and a call to action.
Yes.
This isn't just a story of devastation.
Right.
It's a story about resilience,
Right.
community, and the power of people to overcome these incredible challenges.
Absolutely. Let's use this as a chance to make a real difference,
Right.
to build a future
Yeah.
where our communities are safer, where our ecosystems are healthy, and where the threat of wildfires is reduced.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes, thank you.
We hope this has given you some new insights, inspired you to reflect a bit,
Yeah.
and maybe even to take action.
Right.
Remember, even the tiniest spark
Mhm.
can ignite a powerful flame of change.